Okay, we're here with Toni Lane. Tell us just super briefly about your journey thus far.
Sure. So I got into blockchain in around 2011 by complete and total accident. I just got this message that I should watch anime. I don't know, you know how sometimes you wake up from a dream and you're just like, I should go to this grocery store, I should do this. And I started watching these films by a director called Satoshi Kon. He's one of the most prolific anime directors ever. He did, Perfect Blue, which is the basis for the plotline for Black Swan, and there's actually a scene in Requiem for a Dream that's a direct cut from Perfect Blue into Requiem for a Dream. It's a beautiful homage in cinema. I ended up in this situation where Bitcoin kind of found me, right? And so got into the industry in 2011, was really speaking a lot about political disillusion, and a disillusion, honestly, of this entire Western idea of, whether it's economics or politics, that this spectrum of logic we had used to structure our world for the last century was crumbling. And Bitcoin just kind of found me. And so I ended up spending 3 months in silence and meditation, and then was figuring out where I was going in the world after being a performing artist for the first half of my life. And yeah, it was just an amazing transition. And so I got into the industry in around 2013. I co-founded a publication called Cointelegraph. I was running an ad agency previously, and so media has always been a huge background for me. Ran Cointelegraph for a few years, and I stepped out of that to start working on what is really meaningful to my heart, which is global citizenship, and really helping humanity in the transition from our current model of nation states into community-oriented governance.
And where are you with that vision? Obviously, you've aligned yourself with some pretty amazing people that are on the same track. What are you guys building, and what stage are you at with that?
Yeah, so our open source community is called Web of Trust. That's stewarded by Christopher Allen, who is the co-author of TLS and SSL, which basically, if you go into your Gmail and you click the little arrow next to the person's name who sent you a message, you see a little lock, and then a parentheses, and then it says TLS encrypted. That's Chris. He really built the encryption standards for what we know as the entire internet, and that's mind-blowing, right? And so he has been working on Web of Trust in and out of the community for the last couple of decades, and it's just finally we have the technology, and finally it's the right timing. And so he stewards this community. We are actually creating the interoperable identity standards for the open source blockchain identity community. So Qport, Sovereign, Veris1, all of these companies are a part of our community, and they all use DIDs and other series of decentralized identifier standards that were all created through the Web of Trust community. And so the basic idea behind our open source foundation is creating a universal jurisdiction that gives people the freedom to register their identity and their agreements for everyone, anywhere, forever, for free. And so it's the really idea that your identity shouldn't be something that's owned by one person, by one state, by one organization, but really that identity should be self-sovereign and stewarded by your community. And not only your identity, but any agreement that you have, whether that's your marriage or whether that's your education agreement or your land titles or a license. It's the idea that any agreement you can create in the world can now be governed by your surrounding community. And our for-profit is building on that to create a marketplace for all of these different communities to come together and share resources and different decentralized applications to participate in a really dynamic and robust economy with a spectrum of services. So Facebook connects people to friends, and Cultu.re, which is our for-profit wing, connects people to communities and communities to economies. And in that way, helping to form the foundation for the baseline of what is the new structure for the transition we're really experiencing in this modern global age.
Where are we going with this? How far are we away from people getting value from this incredible future that you've just articulated?
Well, so right now I'm talking to a ton of different groups, and whether those groups are, I have about 1,000 people that are saying I'm buying anywhere from 5 to 30 to 700 to an island acres like 10,000 acres, and I'm building an intentional community. I am creating this, I'm stewarding this new property, or this temple of the light, or this old abandoned school, or this abandoned church or castle, and we are building a community here that's either centered around technology, or centered around spirituality, or centered around a group of artists like the Chelsea Hotel, and photographers who all come here and believe in the same values and care about their work in the same way. And so we're all aligned in our mission, and we're focused on the art of co-creation within that. So whether that's from the spectrum of these new and modern intentional communities, or if it's talking to prime ministers and actually saying it's a win-win situation for everyone involved, because what our technology at Web of Trust is actually capable of doing is giving this global database to the planet, so every nation in the world and every person in the world has access to that information in the same way you'd have access to a list of Bitcoin transactions by knowing a wallet address. But the beautiful thing is that, one, the people choose, and two, this is an R&D facility for every major organization in the world to make more effective decisions based on the individual's understanding of themselves and the collective perception. Now, something that's really important to include here is that it's not a perception of a person based on a lack of context or understanding. It's really more about compassion in action and restorative justice, reciprocity. So if you're in a situation where you make a claim, so if I'm a refugee, someone can make a claim about me and say, oh, I know, or not me, I mean a real person, right? Someone can say, I know this person, I've worked with them for 7 months, I can verify they are who they say they are, I've known them for this long, and they have skills as a carpenter. And they can speak English, and they're great with children. And so if you're applying for a citizenship, a nation can see, oh, here's a contextual portrait of who this person is and what they can bring to my society. Now, in the same vein, let's say you make a claim about someone, and you're like, that guy is so mean. What a meanie. And he might not actually be mean. Maybe he's someone who lost both of his parents when he was very young, and so the way that he learned to deal with this situation is by not connecting with other people, because the idea of losing someone was so hard for him. He had to harden himself to be a success in his career. So everyone has a story, and most of the time it's an unseen story. And so it's really through that series of claim, if you're making a statement about a person's reputation outside of their skill, that our principle is really integrated into restorative justice. So getting two people to understand each other, and if those two people can't reach understanding for each other, getting their communities involved in creating a shared context, and through that shared context, hopefully bridging into the ability for all of us together to create shared meaning.
Where do governments sit on this? Do you see them as an obstacle for what you guys are creating, or can they embrace this and see that this is the future as well?
Yeah, they do, and in a way that for me is unbelievable, because I was like, oh, this will happen in my lifetime, but then I'm getting into these conversations and I'm like, wow. I go into these meetings and I'm blown away, because this is something people need. There with all of this massive population of refugees or migrants with any process of immigration, the biggest challenge people are facing in decision making from any element, whether this is citizenship or reading news, is the sheer lack of context. And so it's really something that is everyone wants. I feel like you're doing the right thing when everyone wants and needs integrally the thing that you're creating. And it's not built for governments necessarily. Like, we don't build proprietary technology for governments. We're building a global standard. And that's something that can be used by governments, by private enterprises, massive corporations, and by individuals that have no organization, no home to call their own, no nation to give them a sense of identity or access to rights. Everyone in the world, regardless of whether you were born, I shouldn't have more opportunity than someone else because I was born, just being born in the United States is such an advantage. How is that fair to a little girl who's born in Venezuela? And that universal access to our rights and registration is so integrally important for the human race to have. So that's really what we're creating, and the beauty is that I think you really know you've created something that can win when everyone has what, no one's mad about it. No one is threatened by it. Everyone wants what you're creating, and that's the only way I know how to help is by helping everyone to evolve.
So good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people follow you and also follow the project?
Sure. Yeah, so you can find me at Toni, ToniLanec. That's on Twitter and on Telegram. My website for my company is literally just the word culture, CULTU.RE. And my personal website is Toni with an I, Lane.com.